there's a lot of complicated uniques. Um, a lot of these super OP creatures are uniques, and yeah, they're also the rarity of creature that gets the most changes. Um, yeah, there's 40 uniques, which is the second least of any rarity, but this will probably be one of the longer videos in the series because it's so complex. So yeah, let's get started. Reminder that this is unboosted and full environment. No boosts, and it's not like a tournament, like unique rarity tournament tier list. And this, of course, isn't the right list. It's just my list, and yeah, it's just my list. Anyway, starting off at number 40, Tour Moloch. Tour Moloch is by far the worst unique in the game. It's not even close. It's just not good at all. Like, okay health, high damage, high speed. It's got decent base stats, decent resistances. It's just its moveset does not work for PvP at all. Group superiority in PvP is the exact same as superiority strike. Lesser group heal. Group acceleration is good. Group acceleration is really the only good thing about this thing. As it's a priority hit with only one turn cooldown that increases its speed a bunch. But it's only got strikes to deal damage. And yeah, that automatically means it's just not good. Number 39, Smila Nemes. Yeah, this is pretty bad, isn't it? I mean, this one is one of the ones that's overrated. I think it's super bad. Most people think it's more mediocre. But it just doesn't work. Like, again, decent base stats. It's got high armor while being fast. Alright resistances. And its moveset doesn't look too bad on paper. It just doesn't go well together. Basically up precise pounds and a rampage and run. But the problem is it's delayed rampage and run, which means it can't use that other rampage until turn 3. And that doesn't help when you have pretty low base damage too. So yeah, Shield Disarming Strike is good though. But Small Enemies just doesn't work. 38, Earl Dominus. One of my favorite creatures to use. This thing is really fun, but it is absolutely not good. So yeah. Pretty typical cunning stats, except it has an absolutely ridiculous crit chance. Really good resistances. And its moveset is kind of hit or miss. Revenge Cloak is honestly kind of underrated and is really fun to use. And these two moves deal a lot of damage. But with how many tanks there are in the meta, this thing it struggles to find a place. 37, Pterovexis. A swap-in bleeder. This one has been getting a lot of changes for a while now. Like in 2.11, it got it's got its distracting impact changed to distracting rampage, and it got on escape evasive strike and like some better stats. And then in I think it was 2.14, it got even better stats and also got venomous counter and cunning rampage. So yeah, its stats are honestly pretty good. And its resistances, it has literally the best resistances in the game. It's just its moveset is where it's not very good. Minus Swoop is not good at all. Nullifying Impact is alright, but it doesn't have any damage reducing moves on turn 1. Besides the Venomous Counter, but still. And then Cunning Rampage, I guess, does deal damage. Venomous Counter it distracts and spot offense. It also has On Escape Evasive Strike. It's not like awful, but it is definitely one of the worst uniques, and it just doesn't work. 36, Diarogosaur. Like last summer in 2021, it was one of the strongest uniques. Now it's one of the weakest. It's been neglected. Like, it's a tank with a counter, and its damage output is pretty good. It just doesn't work. And the biggest issue is that it has 0 resistances. I think it's the only unique in the game with 0 resistances. Although there are some others that come pretty close and are basically zero resistances in practice. But we'll get to those later. Yeah. Actually, I think there's just one that's like that. It's got 2 resilient moves and 2 shields and raking counter, with solid base damage for a counterattacker like this and a high crit chance, but it gets stunned all the time, which negates its counter. It gets distracted. It gets a lot of things done to it because it lacks resistances. Number 35, Grypolith, another counterattacker. This one has a little bit more use in the meta because it can beat some of the good tanks. Well, kind of good tanks. Like, the good tanks from a few months ago are the more decent tanks now. But yeah. Its stats are generally worse than Dirodosaur's, but it does have some resistances, and its moveset is completely different. This one has more, like, it's got Fierce in it. It has a heal, it has Immobilize, and it has, like, a Ferocious Defense, which is really good. Ferocious Defense works well with the counterattacker. It's also got no Escape. It doesn't do as much, like, direct damage, but it does last longer, generally, because of the heal. So, yeah. 34, Indoraptor. One that just got buffed in 2.16. Basically, it got Armor Piercing Rampage, changed to Fierce Rampage, and it got this bait. So it went from being the second worst unique to not even bottom 5. So that was a pretty good buff. Solid base stats across the board with resistances. Like, Stun Immunity is good, and this Distract Resistance is good, but it's just not very much. And an alright moveset. Face's Stance really isn't very good, but the other moves here are decent enough. But Bait is really what made that buff good because of the attack increase. Basically, one use of this counter increases damage to 1750. So you can go Cleansing Impact to 2100, then that counter will happen after you get hit back, and then your Rampage will do 3500, which is a lot. So yeah, that's pretty good. That said, it still isn't good in general. Like, it just, if this were like 2 years ago, this would actually be pretty solid. It would be more in the mid ranking of uniques, but it's in the lower end just because of how much power creep there is and how many broken things there are, honestly. Number 33, Thorodolosaur. If this were a boosted ranking, this thing would be a lot higher. But unboosted, it's just not good. It's got basic Chomper stats, some resistances that I don't think it deserves because it is so annoying in Aviary with all those boosts. A cleansing move, which it shouldn't have because it's a Chomper. But yeah, it's basically got a basic Chomper moveset except as a cleansing group hit and also instant charge. So yeah, it's a Chomper, and it is one of the best, T-Rex animation type creatures. I think the third best of those. I think I might be forgetting something. But Rexy is a lot better, and Tricho's is a little bit better. So, yeah. There's just better things unboosted. Like, of course, Rexy. But we all know Rexy is overpowered. 32, Argentus Maxima. The first of the 3 unique sauropods, and definitely the weakest. We'll get to one in a little bit, and we'll get to one near the end of the video. Remember 2 years ago, and this is the best creature in the game? Yeah, oh boy, that was a long time ago. Back when it had more health, and more damage, and a little bit of armor, and it had 75% distract resistance. Yeah. And also the Taunt Shattering Rampage only had a 1-turn cooldown, which honestly should just go back to that now. But yeah, old Maxima was super OP. Now it is kind of weak. Like, Distract just kills it. And its only slowing move to deal with those cunnings is one that doesn't cleanse Distraction. So, that's a problem. And sure, it has 2 rampages, and its base damage isn't really that bad. And of course, it's tanky, and it still has good resistances, but it's just there are so many better creatures, and it doesn't work in this meta. Number 31, Tanatarax. Creature that just got changed in 2.17. Literally the only thing that happened to it is it got Distracting Impact changed to Distracting Devour Impact. It's basically the same thing except it has a 1 turn longer cooldown, but it devours. And it does devour for, like, actually pretty good, too. Like, it devours 25% of the damage dealt per turn for 2 turns. So yeah, I think 25% of 2850. Let me pull up the calculator. That's 712.5 per turn. So basically, by the end of that 2-turn devour, you've healed 1425, which is really good for a devour. But it also adds a cooldown, so yeah. Take that with that what you will. I think it's a tiny buff. Some people think it's a nerf. But yeah, Sinatra Rex used to be one of the best creatures in the game, like basically until 2.9, which is around a year ago. And then 2.9 completely just tossed it into the gutter. And literally all that happened to it in 2.9 was Resilience Strike got the deceleration, changed for vulnerability. But that deceleration was what made Tanatarax so good, because it could decelerate a Cunning and then wallop it with Defense Shouting Rampage and it would die. But that's not the case anymore. Now it can't slow down at all, and now it gets completely washed by Cunnings. Yeah. It does okay against tanks, and as long as it's faster than any Fierce it's fighting, then it'll generally do well against them, but it just doesn't really work anymore. Number 30, another creature that just got changed in 2.17 was Trichosaurus. What happened to it is it got a small health increase and a small armor increase, and then it got Fierce Devouring Cleanse. Which Fierce Devouring Cleanse really isn't as good as it could be, because the cleanse happens after the attack, which is completely stupid. And it basically has no resistances, like 50% vuln resistance just doesn't mean anything. The stats are typical Chomper, except it's pretty low on the damage side, but it also has like pretty good armor too. Yeah, this thing was also really good before 2.9, because Resilient Impact decelerated then. The deceleration into the Defense Shouting Rampage, but that's not the case anymore. If we got Superiority Impact, it would go back towards the mid-ranking innings rather than the low-ranking ones. But the buff it got in 2.17 really just didn't help it very much. It brought it above Tanatarax and Ardentis Maxima, and that's it. So yeah, it just doesn't work. There are so many better Fierce Resilience. Like, yeah. I don't know what else to say. It just isn't that good. Number 29, Trichosaurus. Yeah, this one I do think is a little underrated, but it's still not good. Mediocre health, high damage, mediocre speed, decel immunity for some reason, and it also swap prevention immunity, and its moveset is basically Trichoceratops but Cunning. Still has Cleansing Impact and Cute Stun, but it replaces Cunning, Fierce Strike and Fierce Impact with Cunning Strike and Cunning Rampage. And of course it keeps swapping Savagery. Yeah, you're mostly going to swap it in to kill something, and then you'll either do Cunning Strike if you want to do some damage, or Cleansing Impact to get rid of the thing, and get rid of the bind and get out, or to also deal damage, and then do Cunning Rampage. It does a lot of damage after the swap in, it just dies to a lot too, because it's not particularly survivable. That said, it is a swapper, and I can't put a swapper that isn't just outright awful very low, and this one is not outright awful. 28 Magna Pirate, another one that is underrated. I've seen people put it in the bottom 3 uniques. Absolutely not. Magna Pirate isn't bad. Mediocre health, decent damage, high speed, and a lot of resistances. I think these are like the second best resistances in the game, I think. Like, these are some really good resistances here. And then its moveset is actually pretty solid. Um, Nullifying Impact. Nullifying is always nice. It's got a Distract, and it's got a nice Rampage. It's just Power Creep completely destroyed it. And also Swappers don't exactly help either, and the best creature in the game is a Swapper, and you have also 2 other super top tier Swappers. So, yeah. That didn't help it at all. And, again, Power Creep. There are just better Cunning Fierces. In fact, Cunning Fierce seems to be the best type, like, the best creature. The best creatures in the game right now seem to be Cunning Fierce, basically. So, yeah. Anyways, moving away from the weaker uniques and more into the mediocre ones, the number 27 is Antarctic Venator. One that has been overrated for a very long time, but now people are starting to see that it is not as good as they said, and it's just mediocre. So yeah, it's got generally mid to low stats, and its resistances are solid. Its moveset is where it loses me. Revengeance and Ferocity would be good if it had more than a medium counter. Revenge Definite Rampage is really the main standout move on it because it is literally unblockable except for by a flock on Revenge, or even in general. It also Swap and Distraction. And Invulnerability Impact is just there, but you're not going to use it very much. And Medium Nullifying Counter does allow it to do extra damage, and it's nullifying, which is always nice. But it doesn't really work well together. It's been power crept, and generally it doesn't. I don't think it beats all that many things. His matchups aren't very good. Cunnings absolutely destroy it as long as they can kill it before it gets that rampage off, which isn't too hard because it's not like frail, but it's not exactly super tanky either. But yeah, it's got its problems, but it's not bad. Number 26, Tanatarax. One of the most annoying uniques, but one that isn't that great either. It's gotten quite a few changes. In 2.11, it got a counter, and that's all that happened to it. But it brought it up from being like one of the like absolutely awful to kind of just bad but not awful. And then in 2. I think it was 2.14, it got Merciless Alert instead of Lethal Swoop. Lethal Swoop was the worst move on it. And, oh yeah, it also got Group Invincibility back in 2.11, but that didn't change anything about it. But yeah, Merciless Alert allowed it to actually deal damage outside of Bleed and Counter, which was nice. Alright, and also the update that gave it a counter increases base stats. Increases damage. But yeah, it's super annoying, just not that powerful. It's fast. Its other stats aren't really noteworthy. Its resistances also aren't very noteworthy, except for the Swap Punch immunity, which is pretty important for it because it is very much a swap supporter creature. Merciless Alert is a solid move. It allows it to actually deal damage outside of Bleed and the counter. It basically gets a free swap in against something that interferes with swap and invincibility. No escape. Cleansing Swoop is good. It also has a shield here, but you're not going to use it much, honestly. And you're also not going to use Resilient Strike all that much either. It can get it can sometimes be absolutely useless and do nothing, or it can be the most annoying thing ever. It just depends on when it's used and what it's used against. 25, Mammalinia. The single tankiest creature in the game, but also it's not that great anymore because it's been power crept by tanks that are just better. So yeah, 5100 health and 50% armor. That is kind of ridiculous. But it's got low damage and mediocre speed. It's got good resistances, I guess. And its moveset isn't bad. Persistent Ferocious Strike is, of course, excellent. And Resilient Rampage, Dig, and Taunt are decent. We won't talk about Taunting Bellow. 4500 2 turns is okay for a tank, but really not good for the meta. Not good. It doesn't help it really in the meta where damage is kind of necessary. So, yeah. Super tanky and not much else, but power crept by better tanks. 24, Liquorspix. A mid-level unique Cunning. it's got good health for cunning, and its base stats in general are pretty good. It's got decent cunning resistances. Um, it's also got 2 rampages on revenge, so it can do a lot of damage, and it's got a stall move here. It just gets destroyed by all the good tanks. And it's got power cracked by better cunnings. 23, Gemini Titan. Another sauropod. This is basically our Dentis Maxima, but a little better. It's got a little bit less health, but more damage and more speed. Generally better, actually, absolutely better resistances, because it has distract resistance, unlike Maxima. And definitely a better moveset, too. It can't use its shield, like its invincibility move as often, but it has a much better defense shattering move. Definite shield advantage is very good. In fact, I would say it's among the best moves in the game. Not an OP move, just super good. That said, it has absolutely been power crept. 22, Pocandactylus. When it was added, it was the weakest unique in the game. It was absolutely awful. And then it got a little buffed, and it was still pretty weak. But then it got buffed again, and it actually became really good. And then it kind of got caught up too, and now it's just mediocre. It's got mid-level health and damage, and it's fast. It's a cunning counter attacker basically, or kind of cunning fierce, but yeah. Good resistances, I guess. And then it's got a very stally moveset. The counter is really the best part, in conjunction with Fearless Flap, because this thing absolutely destroys most Fierce. Like, Fierce do not stand much of a chance against it. I think this thing can beat Rexy, but someone will have to check that for me. I'm not 100% sure. But beating Rexy is really good. Is it able to beat Alberta Stevia? I'm not really sure on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did, because it beats Fierce. But yeah, the problem with it is it can't do anything for damage on turn 3 outside of the counter, and also it gets destroyed by tanks. So yeah. 21, Compsocalus. The worst unique flock, absolutely underrated, but not great either. Good health for a flock with decent damage and good speed. Resistance is D-cell immunity, which I'm not sure why it has it, but it does help it. And the other resistances aren't particularly noteworthy. And Cunning Strike, which most Cunnings have. Hop and Mock, which is kind of mediocre. Restricted Group Distraction is good. Alert Scurry is really good. And it's got Swap and Distraction. And of course, it's a flock. So yeah, Alert Scurry allows it to heal on 2 members, which is always good. And it does damage too with Restricted Group Distraction. I've seen people saying Compsognathus Gnathus is better than it, this thing's better than it, which is absolutely not true, and it is not even close. Compy doesn't do near as much damage at all, and people cite Alert the Flock as the reason, but honestly, Alert the Flock is just really overrated. So, yeah. Compsocalus is still a mid-unique, but absolutely not bad. Alright, now we're starting to get into the more decent uniques. At number 20 is Entolinia, which got a small change in 2.16. It got stun immunity, so basically the thing that countered it most, it started not countering it at all. So it was able to destroy it. It was able to beat some good creatures. That said, it's still not that good because other good creatures absolutely obliterated. So, it's got decent health with very high armor, good damage, really slow. The 2 best immunities in the game, which is always nice. Persistent Virtual Strike is always good. Its moveset is just generally really good. But if Resilient Impact still decelerated, I think it would be better. So yeah, it has no way to decelerate, which doesn't help against Cunnings. Cunnings usually won't be able to kill it because they can't get through that armor, and it'll out-heal the damage they do. But it doesn't do all that great for killing the Cunnings in a timely manner anyways. So yeah, that's Entolinia. 19, Trudoboa. one of the newest uniques was added in 2.13 and then got a little change in 2.15 where its its basic move basically just became priority. This is one of the best basic moves in the game, and really all of its moves are pretty solid except for Group Cunning Rampage, which is really mediocre because of that delay. It's also got good resistances. The stats are pretty mediocre though. But yeah, it's a counter attacker. It's cunning resilient. Um, Although they say it's wild card, but it isn't. There's no fierce. Um, and um, yeah, it beats some cunnings. It loses to some most of the cunning fierce meta. Um, yeah, I don't know much. I don't really know what to say about it besides that it's just all right. Because I'm not really the most knowledgeable on Trudoboa. I don't have it, and I haven't fought it very much. But looking at it here, I think this position is right for it. Number 18, Rex. This thing's had some history. Added in 2.10, it instantly became the best creature in the game. Okay, maybe not the best creature in the game instantly, because Gunnosaurus is still OP, but it became the best creature in the game in the next update. And then it was still top 3 until 2.14 when it got nerfed. Basically, used to have 4,050 health and 1,600 damage and a 15% crit chance. And then critical sidestep had no cooldown, and it had a swap in, which is basically swap in savagery, but better. Then it got nerfed, and now it's gone into the more decent category rather than the unapologetically busted category. Of course, this is before Alberto Cevia was added. It got nerfed the update before Alberto Cevia was added into the game, so yeah, it would not be the best unique today. It would honestly barely even be top 5. It would barely even be top 5. But yeah, it's still crazy, of course. Like some aspects of it are still crazy. Of course, it's got the massive instant hit on turn 1, and it still has a critical sidestep, and Lethal Rampage Run is still really good. It's just been, the nerf kind of just hurt it so much, and also, of course, it's been power crept some too, because of all the new things being absolutely crazy. But yeah, 4X is decent. Number 17, Quattorian. We're starting to get into the more good range now. Quattorian is underrated and really solid. Good base stats, like really good base stats. Okay resistances, and its moveset is pretty interesting. Long Invincibility is the standout move, because Cunnings will not get through to you all, and then you can do Nullifying Rampage to turn 2 to do a lot of damage, and of course get rid of dodge, and it's distract immune, so yeah. It's really a cunning killer, but it doesn't do particularly well against fierce, and not really that great against resilience either. But yeah, it's a cunning kill. It's a fast cunning killer. And yeah, Quattorian is pretty solid, and I used it for a long time, but of course I dropped it because I got better creatures. Number 16, Model Rhino, something that has been a staple of the meta from 2.0 to basically, like, I guess, I don't know exactly when it fell off, but I would say somewhere in like the 2.13 range, 2.14, or maybe even 2.15. But yeah, it was a staple for a very long time, and now it's just fallen into a good but not great unique. Still has super good resistances, still takes forever to die because of the cost of shields, but there are just better swappers now. It doesn't do very much damage, and it doesn't beat much. Its matchups aren't very good. But it's still got good utility going for it. Number 15, Spinal Constrictor. We're starting to get into the more, like, really good uniques. Spinal Constrictor, one that hasn't really fallen off as much as some people have said. It's got solid base stats, solid resistances, and a good moveset. Basically, it's a bleed. It's bleed. Like, it literally deletes half of the enemy's health on turn 1 with the bleed combo. As long as they aren't bleed resistant, of course. It's also got a Rampage and Instant Distraction, which helps get more wounding counters off, and a Non-Escape. Really good Cunning Bleeder, and yeah. 14, Testicornibus, a fast tank. And yeah, it's really annoying too. Unless you have a Fierce, it's just going to be super annoying. Very fast, very tanky, with good resistances. And it also heals a bunch too. And of course, there's Devastation. And also, Bleed's not going to help you much because it's got Cleansing, Decelerating Impact. Yeah, really annoying unless you have like a Chomper, but there are plenty of those to go around now, especially with Rexy. So yeah, Rexy being in the game kind of took Testa down a peg, but it is still a good fast tank. 13, Scorpius Rex Gen 3. I mean, this thing's also had history. When it was added, it literally knocked several creatures down quite a bit. And it has fallen off a little, but it is still very solid. Toxic Quills is one of the best moves in the game. Critical Ambush is a very good swap in. Instant Ambush is a good move. It's got good resistances. Okay stats, I guess. It also has a Rampage return too after Toxic Quills, just for good measure, deal extra damage. It's just power crept by some things. So yeah. Number 12, Alberto Spinos. When it was added, it was disappointing. It basically took Albertosaurus, which is one of the best rares in the game, and combined it with a legendary that used to be super good a long time ago. So we were expecting it to be really good, and it turned out to be very mediocre. And then it got a little buff in stats and became slightly less mediocre. Then it became actually pretty good in 2.14, like really good. And then it kind of got cut up too, but it's still good. It's a basically Bleeder Chomper hybrid. Basically, it's what you get when you give Thor Bleed and also make it really fast. Sure, it's got less health and a good bit less damage, but it's got, in my opinion, better resistances. And its moveset it doesn't have the stun, but it still has a priority hit, and it has Bleed. Plus, it has a no escape and a swap in. You're not going to use the swap in much, but it's there in case you need it. But yeah, a solid Bleeder that can do some good damage too outside of the bleed. Number 11, Androtops, the ultimate revenge killer. Honestly, this thing is just the god of revenge killing. So yeah. Mediocre health with a little bit of armor, high damage, and good speed. 75% decel resistant and 75% stun resistant, plus distract immunity. And then the most just revenge-based moveset ever. Like, delayed... It's got the Revenge Distracting Rampage on turn 1. And then you have the counter. You have a full counter on something with Distract Immunity and 1600 base damage. Oh yeah, it also applies Vulnerability, so it can do even more damage on turn 2. And it's got Cleansing Impact. Piercing Revenge, which you're not going to use much, but it's still there. But yeah, really it's just main thing is just that massive revenge damage and the counter. Starting off our top 10 is our Dontignathus. I mean, like, it's a flock, and it is a really good one. It's the third best flock in the game. And the third best unique flock, too. It's average hit flock health, okay damage, low on the flock speed, but still decent speed. Good resistances, although really not what you'd expect from something that has Ardontosaurus in it. You'd expect it to have like some decel resistance or something. But yeah. And its moveset, so yeah, its turn 1 is bad, but after that it just gets going and doesn't stop. It has Alert the Flock, and this Alert the Flock actually works on 2 members, so it's not as bad as the one that works on 1 member that a lot of creatures have. Accelerate Invincibility on Escape was pretty solid. Definite Alert Frenzy. Honestly, it's actually worse than regular Alert Frenzy because it isn't a Devastation on Threatened, it's a Rampage instead. And it isn't even definite, it's only armor piercing, but it's still a super good move. Decelerating Side Flap is just sidestep but decelerating, but also has a cooldown. And Defense Shutting Rampage also deal extra damage. It's a fierce flock, Although it's wild card, but it's mostly fierce. Yeah, and of course it's really good. Number 9, Utahrinex, a creature that got a big overhaul in 2.17. Basically, it got Swap and Resilient Strike, which is the main part, and then it got its Distracting Impact, Rampage and Run, Instant Charge, kind of changed to Distracting Impact to Run, Stunning Rampage and Run, and Instant Stunning Strike. But yeah, most of the time you're going to swap it in, do a ton of damage to Swap and Resilient Strike, and apply Vulnerability. Then do the Instant Stunning Strike, a priority hit on turn 1, that basically comes in impact with the Vulnerability, and also stuns. Then you're going to do the big Stunning Rampage and Run, stun them, do a ton of damage, and you're not going to be running out, because you're still going to be pinned from your swap in. And then you run out with Distracting Impact and Run. Now, if it weren't for all the Vuln and Stun resistance, it would be higher, but those resistances do drag it down a bit. But it still does a lot of damage, and it's a swapper with insane base damage, so it's automatically high based off of that. Number 8, Parasol. A swapper that is just a little bit better. It's definitely slower and more based on being able to be brought in multiple times, rather than just being brought in once and going crazy that one time. Good health, and of course still high damage. And its resistances are kind of mid, honestly, not really that good. The main thing with it is its healing is absolutely ridiculous, and its swap in also shatters. And it has counter power heal. It also has a Resilient Rampage Revenge, which is honestly it's a group attack on Revenge for some reason. But yeah, really its main thing is its healing. It's gonna take a while to kill it. Yeah. It's not the best unique swapper, though. We'll get to that later. Number 7, Giganix. One that, when it was added, was decent, but not that great, and then it got buffed, and now it's absolutely ridiculous. So, insane base stats, really good resistances, and its moveset is the least impressive part, but still really good. Fierce Devouring Cleanse is alright. Obstructive Fierce Impact is good. Fierce Devouring Rampage is pretty good. Fortress Restore is really good. It's a 1.5x heal with Ferocity and crit chance increase and cleanse and a speed increase. And Crushing Alert Showdown is incredibly powerful because it literally, you swap it in when you're below half health, you heal yourself and your enemy to 100%, but then stun your enemy. You both swap evented, but you also get your attack, your speed and crit increase, and crit chance increased. So yeah, it's just ridiculous, honestly. Like, it does a lot of damage. It's tanky. It's fast. It just has a lot. But it's only number 7. Number 6, Dialor Kairos. We're starting to get into the most overpowered uniques. Dialor Kairos got changed in 2.17. Basically, got a health increase. I think an attack increase. I can't remember if it had 1650 before or not. And a slight speed increase. And then it got its Cunning Strike was changed to a Group Cunning Strike. It got its 2 heals changed a little bit and basically upgraded. And then it got a full counter, which is the main part that made it incredibly OP. So yeah, now it is literally Androtops and Fukui Minus mixed together. And if you know anything about those 2 creatures, you know that it is one broken combination. Number 5, Comsa Raptor, the newest unique in the game, and honestly, I don't think it's I've seen some people say it's the best creature in the game. I don't think it's that OP, but it's still a top 5 unique. And honestly, you know what? If I made this in like a month, it might be even higher. It might honestly be number 2, giving some time. But right now, for me, it's number 5. But yeah, average flock health, good damage, very high speed, and it's DSO immune for whatever reason, and distract immune. And it has a high crit chance, and it has this Courageous Alert, and an Alert Shattering Impact, and a Rampage Run, and Playful Pounce, and a swap-in that heals it. That heals it one flock member, and dodges and distracts, and it's got this on escape, and it's a flock! Why did you do this, Jam City? It is Tarbignathus on, like, the most jacked up steroids possible. It is just insane. I don't know why they gave this the green light. But I still don't think it's the best flock in the game. That goes to Alodrigas, because Alodrigas is literally Aloraptor but made a flock. I mean, it's just so insane. It doesn't have distract immunity like Comsa Raptor has, but otherwise his resistances are just better. Still super fast, but has even more ridiculous damage and only slightly less health. And its moveset may not seem quite as crazy, but it is still really good. Alert Peck on it's literally a rending takedown on turn 1, followed by a big rampage afterwards. Can still heal on 2 members, and it's got Fierce Strike. And it still has a non-escape, even though it's not as OP of a non-escape. Honestly, you could swap these two around. Give it some time, I may see Comsa Raptors better, but right now I think they're basically equal, but prefer Alodrigas. Though still super OP, though. Now, these next two are two that have been at the top for around a year now or more. Most people think they've dropped down a little bit, but I still think they're incredibly powerful, and I still think they're both top 3. A lot of you will disagree with this. But number 3 is Endotaurus. It's just crazy, honestly. Like, high health, high damage. Sure, it's got low speed. Resistances could be better based on, like, it's an Endom hybrid, but they're still solid resistances, and its moveset is the main part. Cloak counter, cloak grid or any counter. What more should I say? And also the counter doesn't even use up the cloak, so that next turn. So yeah, you're gonna be, it's priority, so you're gonna use it first, and then you're gonna get a big cloak counter. Then you're super slow, so you probably get another big cloak counter next turn. Then you're gonna get a giant cloaked cleansing rampage. Oh yeah, it also has an unescape cloak too, and a vulnerable shattering impact. This thing is ridiculous. And it's the absolute bane of tanks and fierce alike. It just destroys so much, and I don't think it's been power crept at all. I still think it is tippity top. But number 2 is Spinosaurus, one of the best tanks in the game, and it's not even full resilient. It's got part cunning in it too, which helps it actually not get destroyed by fierce. But yeah, super tanky, and it's a counter attacker, and it's got distraction and a shield and a big rampage, and really good resistances. Yeah, it's got one of the best matchup spreads in the game, and it's number 2 for a reason, honestly. But number 1 is unquestionably Alberto Cevia. Alberto Cevia is the best creature in the game and the best creature to ever exist in the game. No questions asked. It is bafflingly OP. Nothing about it makes sense. Good base stats, like really good base stats, and good resistances, and its moveset is absolutely bonkers. So, it's got basically Defense Shattering Strike, which is a good basic move, I guess. Distracting Revenge Blow, which is basically it's literally, honestly, it's actually just Revenge Distracting Impact, but it distracts 100% on Revenge, but it also has longer cooldown, but still. Instant Ferocious Revenge, which on Revenge, it is literally an instant Ferocious Impact, and off Revenge is also that, but with a delay. Precise Revenge, which is Precise Rampage, but becomes Group Precise Rampage on Revenge. A minor Fierce counter, so shields aren't going to work against this. And Swap-In Devouring Strike, which is a Group Precise Swap-In that devours. What more is there to be said? Honestly, this is unfathomably overpowered, and it does so much. It has basically everything you could want. Sure, it does, like you could say, it doesn't have an on-escape, but so what? It has everything else. Alberta Stevia is extremely busted, and I don't know why Jam City gave it the green light. Honestly, Alberta Stevia power crept several creatures alone. Like, it literally knocked creatures into irrelevance when it was added in 2.15. There's a reason I think 2.15 is the worst update in JWA history, and this is one of those reasons. As this broken monster. But yeah, that's the unique ranking. Let me know what you thought. Like and subscribe if you want. Apex ranking will be coming out soon. I don't know exactly when, because school started up again, and I am going to be busy, but it will be happening soon, before the next update. Yeah. See you guys in the next one. Goodbye.